Good afternoon. Thank you for being present today as I recap all that transpired this past Saturday. In preparing for the July 4th holiday, the department took into account all of the formally recognized and scheduled events, to include the baseball at the Bison Stadium, the Rubber Duck, the weekly detail in the Chippewa Bar District, and additionally, the department prepared to handle the Trump rally that was scheduled for Niagara Square. We also planned for numerous pop-up events that we were receiving intelligence on, which included many off-the-grid parties in some of our parks and throughout the city. Of particular concern for us was an event by a self-proclaimed street party promoter. And this particular promoter had caused significant issues for the Buffalo Police Department in the past. This year, he was publicly pushing for a block party to occur on July 4th at the intersection of Stevens Street with a planned street takeover at East Delavan and Grider. Knowing of what was being promoted, the department engaged in numerous countermeasures. We worked with the Department of Public Works to install speed humps to deter street racing. We went door to door in the community to ask for cooperation from the community in deterring this event. We worked with various businesses in the area, requesting that they close early to avoid unnecessary traffic congestion. We leveraged our Special Investigations Unit to glean as much intelligence as possible. And we increased our overtime manpower by approximately 150% over last year to ensure that we had sufficient personnel. The evening began with our SWAT personnel having to respond to Ohio Street, where multiple individuals had gotten on top of a vacant grain elevator, and we could clearly see that one individual was firing a gun. Unfortunately, this event was a precursor for the events ahead for the evening. Delavan and Grider, where the promoter had been advertising, began as a manageable crowd, but the crowd size exploded. Unfortunately, many of the individuals at the location and at the adjoining streets were combative and seeking to wreak chaos. Multiple individuals had guns, and this presented an enormous safety challenge for the police, both to themselves and protecting the public. During the course of the evening, there were 6 separate shooting incidents, which resulted in 11 individuals being shot. Although we can say that there were 6 shooting incidents, we cannot say for certain how many people actually fired their guns. As of this morning, it has been reported that all 11 individuals are stable. The shooting victims range in ages between 13 to 51 years of age. The breakdown of the shooting victims are as 4 were shot at Stevens, 3 were shot at Glenwood, 1 was shot at Moselle, 1 shot at Humber, 1 shot at Grider, and 1 individual was transported to ECMC. What we found is that 8 individuals were shot during the course of 1 hour and 11 were shot during the course of 2 hours. I am beyond disgusted with the organizer of this event, and I am coordinating with the city's corporate counsel to pursue a cease and desist order, along with holding them responsible for the city's overtime bill. In Atlanta, where I worked previously, this was an avenue that the police department, in conjunction with the city's law department, pursued quite successfully when confronted with irresponsible promoters and/or business owners. While none of our officers were injured during the July 4th evening, we had another incident that was extremely disturbing occur in South Buffalo. The officer was dispatched to a fight call on the street where he lives. He handled the call, he left the call, and shortly thereafter his home was vandalized with his wife and 2 children inside. Whether the vandalism was caused by a gunshot or by an object being thrown through the window, at the window, we don't know. But it was traumatic for them involved. Separately, the Chippewa Bar District had multiple large fights. And I will say in conclusion, many of the officers working on July 4th were subjected to gross verbal abuse, and they had their physical safety threatened for prolonged periods of times. And to them, I say thank you for handling yourself so professionally, and your restraint is to be commended. This cannot be who Buffalo is. And as the Commissioner of Police, I will do everything within my authority to arrest, prosecute, and convict those individuals who are traumatizing others. Thank you. I'm available for questions.
The officer whose home was vandalized, there were reports that, he was responding to a large crowd in the area of the neighborhood. They recognized him, or whoever it was, and, then went and attacked the house. I mean, can you give us some more details about, was he responding to an area where he lived?
So he normally works in a different district, but for this particular day, he was assigned to the district he actually lives in. There was a fight call on the street. He went with his colleagues to dispel the fight, disperse the fight, and it was after he left that some individuals targeted his home. We're getting conflicting reports on whether shots were fired into the house or whether objects were thrown to shatter the windows.
And was that fight near his home?
It was on the street, the same street.
Mr. Shields, good afternoon. As part of your strategizing beforehand and some of the steps you took, I was wondering if part of that step included a mutual aid, your kind of sheriff's deputies, state police, anything like that, or did you have to bring them in during the incidents, or is that part of what's going to go on going forward?
We did not need to bring them in, and I will say we did not feel it was necessary, nor would I in hindsight necessarily know that they would have a role in our planning. Let me say this, and I think it's really important that we don't leave here losing sight of what caused this to go sideways Saturday night was the environment and the behaviors of select individuals. They came to the city, to this location, to wreak chaos. And that in and of itself is unacceptable, and that needs to be what we are targeting, whether it's through enforcement efforts by the police, whether it's by continued outreach by our nonprofits, whatever it may be. But we need to hold those individuals who are finding this acceptable accountable. And I think what's been particularly compelling for me today is we have an idea of who is coming to these events. And Chief McAllister is responsible for the E District, and where most of this occurred. He did an enormous amount of outreach. We rode around for a couple of hours, and I believe it was Wednesday, to ensure we're prepared. And he was out there being insulted and threatened for hours on end July 4th. But his perspective on who attended this event, I believe, is very compelling. And if you don't mind saying a few words to that, Todd, I think it would be enlightening for the people.
So what we did find, based on the amount of kids that we had out attending this, they were predominantly from the underserved community, but it did not end there. Some of the kids or people who attended this event were from other parts of Erie County. It wasn't just the underserved. They were from areas of Lancaster, and they were also from families potentially that would not be considered in the underserved grouping.
And how they got there.
So what we found too is that there were a lot of kids that actually came in Ubers. We had multiple cars parked on different streets. So while many kids did walk to the area from their particular homes, Ubers dropped these kids off in the parking lots, which we had secured for the entire night. And even at the end, when it was time to take most of these kids home, we had problems with Ubers entering the area of where we were trying to secure, or the area we were trying to secure and move kids out of.
When you say kids, is this gang related, and where do you go with your approach to youth in the city of Buffalo and outside of the city of Buffalo and preventing things like this from happening in the future?
Yeah. So, thank you. I don't think you scrap what you're doing. You know, leading up to this, we had not had a shooting in a couple of weeks. We seized 58 guns in June, 300-plus guns year-to-date. I think it's really, we need to focus on the fact this was one promoter who promoted an event that was geared towards creating chaos and violence, and he succeeded. And that goes back to the accountability piece. These individuals cannot get a pass. And so we remain committed. We do a ton of outreach with our nonprofit groups. There's numerous programs funded through the state's GIVE program, which comes to the Department of Criminal Justice. And we're not giving up on that. I've met and spoken with a couple of council members in the last couple of days to reiterate their support and how they can help us connect with some of these communities that are engaged in some of this behavior. But as Chief McAllister said, the promoter drew in people from outside a much larger footprint, many of whom had many other options. They weren't at-risk, underprivileged children. They were kids who were looking to wreak havoc, and they came into our city to do it, and that's just not acceptable.
Who is this promoter? And are they gonna be arrested?
So they promoted an event last year, similar event. They were arrested. Unfortunately, the charge on them was a misdemeanor, it means nothing to me charge, which is why I'm working with corporate counsel, because I believe that you really have to go after these individuals in their pocketbook. And I'm really hoping that, because my heartburn is, I don't want to see him trying to promote an event in 2 weeks from now. And so it's really imperative that if we have the legal authority to get a cease and desist, to get a bill in front of him, we do that. It's a balancing act. I don't need to tell you all this, and this goes back to your question somewhat. Do you throw in the kitchen sink on resources? Do you just have every police agency, every resource out there, and then you're over-policing, and then you're creating dissension in a community that just wants to have a barbecue? Because these folks have a right to be in their homes. They have a right to have a cookout like everybody else. So we don't want to create a police state. It is a balancing act. And I'm also acutely aware the more police we throw to a problem, the greater likelihood we have an officer-involved shooting, which we want to avoid at all costs. So it's imperative that we're judicious and thoughtful in our approach. But at the end of the day, we are going to hold accountable this one individual who drove a program that resulted in this violence.
What are your thoughts to enforcing the youth curfew stronger?
I believe it's my understanding that would require council approval. And I think that would require a much larger discussion with the mayor and city council for that to occur.
What about staffing? I know you talked about throwing the kitchen sink at events, finding the balancing act. What do you think, better staffing, more staffing, and how many vacancies are there right now in the police department? So
I think that there is, so again, I go back to staffing did not cause this issue Saturday night. What caused this issue Saturday night was a promoter who was promoting essentially violence. We had an increase, our overtime was increased 150% over last year. So, great, next year we do 300% over, but we have to deal with the problem at hand. I think there's this discussion to be held around staffing, and that certainly will occur during CBA negotiations, but I am not letting this promoter off the hook.
But do you feel you're understaffed?
Sorry.
Sorry, but do you feel you're understaffed?
I did not feel that we were understaffed Saturday night.
Not just on that one night.
No,
Obviously, you brought in extra people, they were working
Right.
very hard, it's not that, but overall, do you feel that you have enough police officers to keep the city safe?
I have been here but a couple of months, and every day I'm assessing how we staff, how we manage, where there's room for improvement, and I will continue to do that.
Commissioner, is the promoter local? And will the cease and desist order be made to him? And my next question is, was there any correlation between what happened in Buffalo and what happened in Niagara Falls on Saturday night?
So I'm just now getting with the law department. So to your question, will they care about a cease and desist order? Probably not, which is why you have to go after their pocket and their money. And also if there's potential for criminal charges. I don't believe that we have formed a nexus between Niagara Falls. No, we have not, between Saturday night, what occurred there, and what occurred in Buffalo.
Could you walk us through, you mentioned Stevens, Glenwood, East Sullivan, and Ryder. Could you maybe clarify the timeline of these incidents and when these shootings occurred?
Ted, perhaps what, the last that
I think that for that level of detail, we can probably just write it down for you, and it will be easier for you to read it. We can certainly afford that to you. I have that in a separate document.
Anybody arrested?
Well, we attempted to make arrest at the front end of the evening, and what we found was our officers were being surrounded by individuals, and it became a safety issue, and then crowd control took over. So you would think there would be a huge number of arrests, but the reality of it is we were just overwhelmed on managing the crowd size.
So you say this promoter was geared this event towards create chaos, how so?
I think that if you are saying that you just want people to come to the middle of it in an intersection, and I think that his past performance is indicative of what he saw today.
But like, what was the promoter billing this event as, and was he doing it through social media? You know, how did people know where to go, how to show up, what they were expecting it to be?
It's a street takeover. Take over the street. It's that simple. Social media, yes.
So he was billing this a street takeover?
Yes.
Did you get intelligence advertising?
Yes, and he wasn't subtle in his advertising either.
Could he potentially face any charges for these shootings?
I don't know. I don't know.
And so the thought here is that these shootings, all of them, is that correct to say, stemmed from the street takeover events?
I don't, you know what? I think that clearly they were all, for the most part, they were in the footprint of the street takeover event. One was several blocks removed. Interestingly, we've found that many of our shooting victims are uncooperative, so we're not getting the level of feedback or intelligence one would hope there. Again, it's still the early stages of our investigations, which is why, I mean, our first thought was to be here yesterday providing you with sound, but the reality of it is the sound we provide has to be accurate. And it was simply too chaotic for us to have weaved together an accurate picture. But that is something we're still working on, getting the shell casings, matching the shell casings up, seeing if the locations are interrelated.
But all of these shootings happened in the area and in the time frame that this takeover was happening?
Correct.
I know it's an obvious question, but what is fueling this anger, this, you know, that you want to take over a street, be disruptive, as you said, promote violence, chaos? What is the genesis of all that?
I think a sociologist would be much better quick to answer that than me.
And the street, as a cop, as a preacher, what's your sense?
I just think, you know what, for us, I go out every day and I want us to do the job fairly, treat people with respect, and I think that our ask would be the same.
You
How does
mentioned,
someone like this?
I think that's a question for him. Hopefully you can ask him while he's behind a cell.
you mentioned how overwhelming this was for the officers, and you said this before, they put their lives in danger every day when they respond to events like this. As you go into CBA negotiations, as you see what these officers do every day, as you get more experience in this department, how do events like this change the way you think about these officers and you think about approaching CBA negotiations?
I've policed for 30 years. I have very strong thoughts from having been a cop for 30 years. And one incident doesn't cause me to deviate one way or another. Policing is an incredibly, incredibly difficult and dangerous job, and I have never deviated from that. I will say the 911 officer has the most dangerous job of any cop, and I will always fight for them. And while that translates into and throughout negotiations, that's neither here nor there. What I can say unequivocally is I have an enormous amount of respect for our profession. I'm passionate about it, and I really, really appreciate every cop that shows up and goes out every day and does this job that is so incredibly dangerous.
Where's the city's Office of Gun Violence Prevention in all of this?
So
I think they play us or have a role.
So the Office of Gun Violence Intervention was created, and essentially it is one individual who, at this time, we've just incorporated into the police department with the goal of seeing where they can help us foster communication relationships, maybe with nonprofits we don't have relationships, to help us have community outreach with different community groups that maybe we're not hearing from. At the moment, I mean, we just absorbed it July 1st, so we're just now identifying how it's going to be most beneficial for the department.
And just to follow up to a question I asked before, I said, or can you arrest rate, you explained why at the time.
I don't think anyone.
And certainly, I don't want to. You got trying to folks the impression that if you do identify someone who shot someone, you certainly request.
Oh, certainly. So, yeah, unfortunately, let me say this. We didn't have someone who had a gun and who got away. Most of the arrests we were trying to make in the footprint from where the street takeover was more around disorderly conduct. I'll let Deputy Commissioner Macy, because you dealt with some in Chippewa, I believe, correct?
Yes, ma'am. So there was a couple low-level arrests around the incidents around Chippewa, low-level charge-wise, and, go ahead.
Where all these people were shot.
In that vicinity, no. There is still ongoing investigations into the multiple shootings, so some of that has been fruitful, others not so much. And, there will be some arrests to come, I'm pretty confident, with either the promoter and/or the people involved in the gun violence.
Was there any correlation between what happened on Chippewa and what happened in the East Side?
I don't definitively know that. A lot of the incidents were throughout the night on Chippewa. When things got moving and cleared out on East Delavan, it was almost 2 a.m. So by the time that situation was totally under control.
Commissioner, can you describe the scene for us of the street takeover? I mean, what did it look like for people who haven't seen the video who weren't there? I mean, what was happening? What did it look like?
It's just total chaos. It's total chaos, and it's total lawlessness. And the reality of it is, this is the neighborhood that people live in. People live here and should not be subjected to it. It's not acceptable. And we just have to figure out a way for this not to be a repeat occurrence.
How many people were there?
We've speculated on thousands, but we don't have an accurate head count, for lack of a better word, no.
So Commissioner, you had prior intelligence, you were being proactive, you were out there. I know residents said we saw the police out there at 6 o'clock on East Delavan, but there's a sense that nothing was done or nothing could be done. I know you're going after the promoter, but what about future weekends?
Right.
How are you gonna prevent this from happening again?
Well, and I think that goes back to, Maki, what we're talking about. Do you make it a police state where you have so many police that you're locking everything down and you have a zero tolerance? Because the problem with a crowd is, once you've lost control of a crowd, you don't regain, you can't regain your footing for some time. As this was exhibited Saturday night. So it's a balance with trying to allow the communities to not be subjected to enormous numbers of police resources, but also ensuring that they're safe. I will say again, the first thing we do is rely on our intelligence gathering, and if there's any indication that something like this is afoot, we will certainly modify our approach somewhat.
Are all the people who were shot still in hospital?
I don't know that. I was informed this morning they were all stable, but whether any have gotten out or not, I don't know.
Do you think that if the city of Buffalo had an organized fireworks event or some sort of event where people could go to, that this may not have been as outlandish and crazy as it was, the street takeover?
No. I think I think that maybe they would have gone to the fireworks, but they were going to go to the street event. That was the draw. And I think, you can have fireworks. Maybe some would have gone, but for the most part, the draw was what the promoter was promoting.
Is the department looking for tips, video, photos?
Anything that is relevant, we'll certainly accept. Yes, thank you.
Okay, two more questions. Okay.
Maybe Deputy Commissioner Macy, but could you talk about what the police officers faced? I heard about police officers who were using a blanket to carry one of the victims into their car because an ambulance couldn't get there. I heard about
I'll talk
fireworks
about that.
being thrown.
I can talk.
Sure. You can hear different voices.
Sure. Thank you for that question. So when officers were dealing with the multiple people shot on Stevens, they were faced with people throwing commercial-grade fireworks at them, blocking, pushing, being very combative, verbally and physically, right? Blocking their path, slowing things down, creating a total health situation when you can't get fire trucks and AMR, which is the ambulance company, down to the shooting victims. So that's where the posture noticeably changed for the police to be able to being a little bit more active in how we're going to take care of that situation.
Okay, last question.
The voters thing, I'm getting you that out of the dog.
Not right now,
Why?
because we're going to look at all the different options that we have to be able to leverage against him, both criminally, civilly.
Can you say
So-
where they're from?
They're from Buffalo.
Oh, they are from Buffalo.
Yes.
They brought people from outside.
Yep.
Any
All right.
update on the bomb threat?
Thank you very much. That's it.